Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries channel. Today, we've got two of the biggest transfers we've seen in a long while in the Premier League, and probably two of the biggest transfers we will see of this window. We're going to be talking about the injury histories of Erling Haaland and Darwin Nunez, going to two of the biggest teams in the Premier League this season. We're going to go through if there should be any concerns, if fans from either team should be worried about the histories of these players, and what we can look forward to in the upcoming season. So let's start off with the Norwegian, Ben. A lot of people saying that he is possibly the next best striker in the world. He's going to be like the Lionel Messi, Ronaldo of this generation. But there is some question marks over the fact that he's missed 28 games over the last 2.5 seasons at Borussia Dortmund. So let's look into those injuries. Are there any concerns, any question marks there that you have?
Yeah, I mean, look, first and foremost, it's great to be back, by the way. It seems like it's been a lifetime since we've done one of these. So this is the first one. Do we class this as the end of 2021 to 22, or is this the first of 22-23?
New beginnings, I'd say.
New beginnings. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you would look at that injury record, and on the face of it, you know, there are maybe a few question marks. Certainly with regards to the nature of those injuries, we always talk about soft tissue, muscle pulls, strains, tears. They're the worrisome ones. They're the ones where you feel you can maybe try to avoid those. And, you know, if a player is suffering those kind of setbacks, you know, and are sidelined on a number of occasions across the course of a season, you know, that rings alarm bells. However, you look at the wider picture, the context of the situation, you know, and generally speaking, it's something to be aware of, but it's not of a major concern. You know, we're still talking about a very, very young striker. You know, it's hard to believe that he's just turned 21. So he's just reaching sort of physical maturity just now, you know, so that period from Salzburg into Dortmund and playing in the Bundesliga, you know, we see it when players are coming at the Premier League, a change of environment, and he's still adapting for that. Even though he's had a couple of seasons at Dortmund, he's still adapting, he's still learning. And we've seen even Haaland, how he's changed just physically, just through looking at, you know, visibly the size, the stature, the mass, the muscle weight, you know, all of these can be contributing factors in terms of why maybe picking up these soft tissue muscle injuries, you know, but rest assured, Manchester City would have done their due diligence here. And, you know, with regards to signing the striker, they will have no long-term concerns with regards to bringing him into the fold.
So you're saying with these types of injuries, they're more normal, they're not a big thing to worry about, whereas maybe a different type of injury would get you questioning that sort of longevity of the player?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we'll go to the medical. I think that was undertaken in Spain. And, you know, there's fundamentally, you have two types of medical. You have those which are conducted on deadline day, you know, last moment, you know, they're rushed through paperwork. You have a general overview and, you know, you sign off best you can. Second, you know, you take your time. You have, you know, maybe several days with the player to go through every single aspect of their medical history. You're looking at gaps, maybe when they were sidelined, availability issues. You're doing musculoskeletal work. You're doing kinetic testing for muscles. You're going through cardiac screening, VO2 max testing. You're going through a plethora of tests. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, you do not pass or fail a medical. It's a list of recommendations based on those tests and assessment to potentially sort of flag or mitigate any risk down the line, you know, and after undertaking all of those series of tests, you know, they've ascertained that for Manchester City, you know, Haaland isn't a risk, and certainly for the price that they paid, which is a snip considering, you know, you touched upon it at the top of the show, potentially, you know, the next big world player.
And I just want to ask one more question. And this is, you know, one of those rumors going around on Twitter, the general football community, people saying we should be worried, or maybe in terms of fantasy Premier League, or if you're betting on the Premier League for, you know, goal scoring odds, well, Haaland used some painkillers to play through an injury, and therefore that could put his long-term playing ability at risk. I mean, Ben, this is more of a normal thing, isn't it? You know, the risk versus reward. We talk to Raj quite often about it. Players do play through injuries quite often.
Look, if you were to probably ask the majority of players, if not all of the players, at some point during the course of a season, particularly if you're coming after the back of a long campaign, or in the last couple of seasons we've had unprecedented times, short pre-season, quick turnaround, the Euros, the pandemic, project restart, all of these influencing factors. Players are being managed, almost bandaged up and pushed through games. Very rarely would anybody come out and say, look, I feel 100%. Painkilling injections, painkilling tablets. You do what it is to get through the game, to get you through to the next match. The stakeholders you want to be involved. You're a player. This is what you do. Ultimately, it's about, like I say, is it a case of just managing that pain and getting through? Or, if it is something maybe a little bit more sinister and underlying, do you need to be taken out of action? Or, on the advice of maybe the medical staff, the physios, the club doctor, is it something which, like I say, as long as you can play through that pain, then you're not going to cause any real serious long-term damage.
And I guess one final point on Haaland before we get to Darwin Nunez of Liverpool. The squad specifically of Manchester City is so deep, so full of talent that if he does pick up one of these knocks that you're talking about, something that maybe there's question marks over risk and reward kind of things, there will be, well, we do have a deep enough squad so that he can be rotated, so that he can be rested. And we have seen, Kevin De Bruyne played as a false nine. We've seen other players deployed in that position. There's not a big kind of concern, is there really, over Haaland at all?
Yeah, I mean, not for me. Typically, am I expecting Haaland to come into the City team and play week in and week out and be that guaranteed nailed-down starter, and him not to pick up knocks and niggles in the odd setback? This is going to be a new environment. It's a completely different league. The intensity, the style, the physical demands on the body from playing in a different role, all of these are all going to be contributing factors that can raise the risk of injury incidents. So undoubtedly, there are going to be knocks and niggles along the way, small injuries. Let's not take all of this out of context. Pep and his team, and we look at even the numbers from last season, a side that was pushed all the way in the Premier League, was unfortunate maybe, to maybe not reach the Champions League final, fighting on four fronts, and they only suffered 9 soft tissue muscular tears across the whole of the campaign. That's the least number of any top flight side from the Premier League. So there, the medical department, the sports science team, the coaches, Pep has the utmost trust in his backroom staff. They know how to manage the players. They know when to risk. They know when to rotate. And certainly with Haaland, they would have done their due diligence and they will know how to handle that player. Of that, I have no question.
And it's going to be exciting to see Haaland in the Premier League. But let's move our attentions to Liverpool then, because they too have made a big super signing this summer with a new striker coming through the door, Darwin Nunez coming from Benfica. Now, again, there are question marks, rumours, a lot of people worried about the fact that he's had 2 left knee injuries and 1 right knee injury, which saw him have kind of a few procedures done to him. So do you have worries there that, the knee, as we've discussed many times, there's the ACL, MCL, there's all sorts of ligaments and things there. It's an area of the body that can quite easily get injured. And if it does, it can be quite bad for the career. And obviously when these things do get injured, there is a high risk of re-injury. Or again, do you have no doubts over the decision to get Darwin in?
Yeah, I mean, look, how many times have we discussed the ACLs first and foremost, and most recently with Dr. Prevention, and we talked about how players can sometimes, bounce back. Can they come back bigger, better, stronger, faster than they were pre-injury? On occasions they can do. It depends on where that baseline level is. Now, as he touched upon, some players get to this point as elite sportsmen based purely on talent. And while on the pitch, they are elite off the pitch and away from the pitch? Maybe not. That gives those sports science departments, those medical teams, a lot to work with and a lot to improve. Others who maybe, are model athletes, both on and off the pitch, it's a little bit more difficult. But for me, one of the first things, and when, that, to coin the phrase injury prone, one of the first things that I always look at is availability rates, and particularly in the league. That gives a fairly good indication. And if you look at Nunes over the last 3 seasons, we're looking at a player who has been available and taken part in 84% of all domestic fixtures for Benfica. So, that to me tells you you've got a pretty hardy and a fairly robust player who, like I say, not just one season, not for 2, but across the last 3 seasons. So that's, so in that regard, I don't really have any major concerns on that front.
And the thing is as well, kind of going back to that discussion with Dr. Matt Provencher, he actually said that quite a few players can come back bigger and stronger, especially from these ACLs, because they make themselves a better player and a more rounded player because they work on maybe muscular inefficiencies that they had. And he also said that kind of 2-year time frame after an ACL injury, players can perform as well as, if not even better than before. There is a question, though, of the fact that Nunes, this would be his first season in a top 5 league in Europe. The Premier League as well, we talk about it being the most testing league in the world. And then you add in as well the fact that this is a pressing Liverpool side with some of the hardest kind of work rates in the Premier League. Does that kind of bring in any questions as well? Or is this kind of repeating the Erling Haaland kind of situation that, yes, there'll be rotations, but they will be managed in a fairly big squad with some of the best medical staff in the Premier League or even in world football as a whole?
I think when you look at Liverpool generally, in terms of their recruitment, in terms of how they look to complement the excellent work from their backroom staff. And again, recently we spoke to Tal Brown from Zone 7, but they're working with several other AI companies. Everything is looked to optimize performance, identify when players are ready and when players should be held back. Recruitment is a massively kind of overstate the importance of recruitment, because it doesn't matter what you want to do and how good that player is. If that player cannot cope or is not robust enough to play 2 or 3 games in a week, then Jurgen Klopp really isn't interested, because that's what they're striving for. They're striving to play in 4 competitions, to go deep in all 4. And as we've seen last season, very unfortunate not to complete the quadruple. They pushed Manchester City all of the way. Now, listen to Simon Brundish, who is a very well-connected man, and particularly when it comes to matter with regards to Liverpool now, without any disclosure with regards to his physical attributes of Darwin Nunez. He spoke about, in terms of he's a physical beast, is how he referenced this, both in terms of his pressing and in terms of those lactic threshold tests. You often see at the start of the season, James Milner, at the front of the pack. Well, I think Nunes is going to be a player that's going to be able to push him all of the way. If Simon says he thinks he'd probably be in and around that top 5 of that Liverpool team. And also in terms of his pace, he's been clocked at plus 36 kilometers an hour, maybe in and around, that Virgil van Dijk, 36.7, maybe 36.8 kilometers. So I don't think you have any issues slotting in, to how Jurgen Klopp wants his side to play.
It's like you stolen my statistic there. I was going to say 36.5 he was clocked at in the Champions League, which is faster than Mo Salah. And we know how fast Mo Salah is. I guess the final point on both Darwin Nunez and with Erling Haaland, with both clubs, these are elite clubs with, we can't even put into words the levels that they're working at. As you've kind of alluded to there, the fact that they're working with AI data, they're working with some of the best doctors, best analysts in the world here. they wouldn't have made these sorts of signings on a whim, on a fancy. They've done their due diligence. This has been seasons in the making. This isn't just a kind of a random occurrence. And maybe compared to other clubs in the Premier League, maybe the other side of Manchester where there were more questionable decisions made. These are two clubs that more than often do not make the wrong decisions when making transfers.
Yeah, look, of course, there's absolutely no guarantees, particularly when a player's coming into a new environment, a new country. But, what they try to do by doing all of that research, by doing all of that hard work, that leg work, this is, like I say, not a decision made on a whim. They're looking to mitigate or minimize any, the risk of that player failing. And like I say, this is not so, they're not going to expect this player to come in and hit the ground running straight away. I mean, Diaz at Liverpool is probably an exception to that. We often talk about as well Bruno Fernandes at Manchester United when he first arrived. These are exceptions rather than the norm. It's going to take a little bit of time to bed in, to get used to the style of play, to the environment, to the climate, to the conditions, to the crowd, to the, playing in front of that Anfield crowd, playing for Manchester City week in and week out. They're a team with a target on their back, so they've probably never faced the intensity of games on a week in and week out basis. So look, even if these players, don't in the short term, maybe sort of hit the ground, they're not brought in for that. These are medium and long-term investments, and I'm very confident that both players will be very and highly successful at both clubs.
Well, that is the end of today's video. I guess the first of this Premier League upcoming season. We've got so much content coming through the summer. If you were subscribed last summer, you'll know that we've got some of the biggest and the best analysts coming on through the closed season leading up to the new season. We had Tim Spires on, we've had StatsBomb on, we've had some of the biggest and best. So stay subscribed to the channel for the return of some of those great videos. We're going to be here through the summer. We're going to be talking about transfers, analysing those that do come into clubs and already those existing within the clubs in the Premier League. But for now, we're going to wish you the best of luck. We hope you're enjoying this little time off, and we hope that you're enjoying the work that we're doing behind the scenes for you. But we'll see you again very, very soon.